when the far left in this country pretended to care about women? Remember when they were pushing feminism, trampling on what they called toxic masculinity in the process, confusing gender roles and pushing for women to become leaders? Remember when professors at Woke U would encourage female victims to speak up if they'd been assaulted? They gave them whistles, they designated safe spaces on campus. If you ever feel like you're in danger, run to the safe space. Nothing bad can happen to you there. Remember when they pretended to care about women? Just like they do with everyone else they use, members of Woke United Methodist used women in this country until they no longer served a purpose. As soon as they found another group to marginalize, they married the movement to that group and tossed women into the WNBA dump. I gotta admit to you guys, I was wrong about something I predicted a couple of weeks ago. But this is a situation where I'm glad I was wrong. A couple of weeks ago, the University of Penn selected Lia Thomas as their nominee for NCAA Woman of the Year, essentially tarnishing what has already become a meaningless bullshit award. Each school is allowed to nominate 2 young women, but one of their nominees must come from a marginalized group. In other words, they have to check multiple woke boxes. According to woke logic, Lia Thomas met this criteria. Man pretending to be a woman, check. Man with the ability to have a child, check. When the nominations were announced, I told you guys that there was no fucking way the NCAA wasn't giving this award to Lia Thomas. The NCAA had taken the woke cucumber so many times when it came to Lia Thomas, they haven't been able to sit down for months. The supply of Preparation H in the NCAA warehouse is running low. Luckily for the young women who were nominated and actually deserved this award, the NCAA is not going to get the chance to worship Lia Thomas again. The Ivy League took it out of their hands by selecting a young woman from Columbia to be their representative. Smart choice by the Ivy League, if you ask me. Take a look at these pictures. You tell me which one is the woman. If you were making this decision and you had to select the woman, which one would you choose? Sylvia Bender is a beautiful young woman, looks like your all-American girl next door. She didn't spend her formative years asking God why she wasn't born with an extra appendage, while Lia Thomas looks like your all-American nerd who spent his formative years striking out with women, so he decided to become one. Every time I do a video on Lia Thomas, I research whether or not he's actually transitioned. I know he takes testosterone suppressors and God knows what else the doctors give him so he doesn't grow hair on his back. But I keep looking and waiting for the news to come out that Lia Thomas actually went through with the transition, because right now, he's just pretending to be a woman. It's no different than my 5-year-old nephew pretending to be a police officer. He has a uniform, he dresses the part, but he ain't a fucking cop. What I do know with 100% certainty, Lia Thomas was not a woman when he was competing in the NCAA championships. When Lia was identifying and competing as Will Thomas, a male birthing person, he ranked 462 against other men. Now, I'm not sure how many male collegiate swimmers there are, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Will Thomas wasn't that good. But there was a simple solution to that problem. He changes the name on his driver's license to Lia, grows out his hair or puts on a wig, exchanges his tuxedo for a tutu. All of a sudden, Will Thomas is the #1 ranked swimmer in the NCAA against women. Riley Gaines was one of the many victims who was forced to compete against Lia Thomas. And you guys know how I feel about victimization. Far too many people consider themselves victims nowadays, but Riley Gaines and these other young women, they are actual victims. I can remember a time when everyone would be appalled about a dude walking around naked in the girls' locker room. Didn't matter what side of the political aisle you were on, whether you were a religious Republican or a liberal Democrat. Wasn't that long ago that we could all agree that dudes have no place in a girl's locker room, especially naked dudes. Far left Democrats, they no longer feel that way. This party's become so infected by the woke fungus that all logic and reason are lost when it comes to a marginalized group that helps in furthering their twisted agenda. Yesterday, Riley Gaines was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. She competed for the University of Kentucky, so she was unfamiliar with Lia Thomas until the NCAA championships in March. She's also known for this picture that circulated the internet as the only woman in the photo. I found a couple of things interesting about this clip. One, Tucker Carlson refuses to call Lia Thomas by his fake name. I think it was last weekend when I shared with you guys what I learned in one of my courses at Woke U about the practice of dead naming. Tucker Carlson has violated this woke commandment. When he was introducing Riley Gaines, he constantly referred to Lia Thomas as William Thomas. He doesn't even give him the satisfaction of shortening it to Will. He calls him by his government name, his legal name. Riley Gaines goes into detail about the feeling in the locker room when Lia Thomas walked in. More specifically, she expresses the discomfort her fellow real women felt when Lia Thomas began showing off his goods. Watch for yourself.
But no one really wanted to talk about it. And so this was on day one. And then that night we watched Lia Thomas win a national title and blow all the other females completely out of the water. And that next day we came back and the mood had shifted to where people were mad. The girls, there were tears. These poor 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American. There's extreme discomfort in the locker room. There's, kind of these grumbles of...
Was he wandering around the women's locker room?
Yeah. And that's not something, we were forewarned about, which I don't think is right in any means. Changing in a locker room with someone who has different parts.
So they just set a dude loose in your locker room and didn't tell you?
Exactly. And so I feel like to have that kind of forced upon us, so not only were we, forced to race against a male, we were forced to change in the locker room with one.
First of all, can you imagine how the parents felt? More specifically, can you imagine how the fathers felt? Your young daughter is forced to share a locker room with a fucking dude. Normally, you walk into a girl's locker room, you hear laughter, you hear gossip, you hear typical female banter. If you walked into the locker room at the NCAA championships, you would hear complete silence. The only sound being made was Lia Thomas cranking on his propeller, oiling up the engine, getting himself ready for competition. Imagine being 19, 20 years old, and being forced to deal with this. I would imagine it was extremely uncomfortable for everyone except Lia Thomas. This is all the proof the NCAA needed to not allow him to compete against women. Some of these young women were afraid to complain, but others complained silently behind the scenes. Clearly, their complaints fell on deaf ears. You have no right to take this opportunity away from Will. If he wants to be a woman today, he can be a woman too. Last week, Riley Gaines was interviewed by Tomi Lahren at Outkick. She was asked why more young women were not speaking out. Now, I've been critical of these young women in the past for not speaking out or speaking anonymously when they do. It's a tough lesson to learn at such a young age, but sometimes you have got to defend yourself, even when the consequences are scary. Riley Gaines said that most of these young women are afraid to speak out because they've been threatened by the NCAA or their own universities. They've been threatened with losing their scholarships. They were told if they were uncomfortable with a swinging dick exposed in the locker room, that they would be forced to seek counseling or perhaps sensitivity training. Remember this clip that I showed you a couple of months ago?
There was a lot of things you couldn't talk about that were very concerning, like a locker room situation. If you even brought up concerns about it, you were transphobic. If you even bring up the fact that Lia swimming might not be fair, you were immediately shut down as being called a hateful person or transphobic.
But there's never any conversation. The coaches don't sit everyone down and acknowledge what everyone's really upset about.
So Penn actually brought in people high up in the athletic department to talk to us. They brought in someone from like the LGBTQ center. They brought in someone from the psychological services.
So you're upset about what's happening, and so
Yeah.
you need psychological help.
Yeah. And they told us in this meeting, they said, look, we understand there's an array of emotions, but Lia swimming is a non-negotiable. However, we can help you make that okay. That's what we're here for.
Like I've told you guys before, Lia Thomas is being used and he don't even know it. He was used by his coaches. He was used by the University of Penn. Lia Thomas was their cash cow. He put multiple championships on the coach's resume. He brought mainstream attention to the program. Now, whether the attention was positive or negative didn't matter. Most of the attention in the mainstream media was positive. The negative attention came from normal people like us. Lia Thomas was used by woke United Methodists to further the narrative they're trying to push to the next generation, which is normalizing the transgender movement. They want kids to think this is normal. They want kids growing up thinking it's perfectly normal to see Susie one day and Sam the next. They are sexualizing these children at a young age, confusing the shit out of them. And just like everything else with the woke movement, it all comes down to power and control. It's no different than what they're doing right now with mythical global warming. I'm sure you guys saw last week, Joe Biden was thinking about declaring a national emergency because it was fucking hot in July. They are using every tool at their disposal to completely transform this country. I saw something just last night. Chinese government has purchased thousands of acres of land next to American military bases. Who in the hell thought that was a good idea? Anyway, I'm getting way off topic. Let me know what you think. Lia Thomas eliminated from the NCAA Woman of the Year award. Riley Gaines details the discomfort young women felt in the locker room. How would you feel if this were your young daughter? I hope they sue the shit out of the NCAA and everyone involved in this. But let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.